Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Safina Chizik-Singh. I'm a first year studying government and astrophysics at the college, and I'm a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee. Before we begin, please note the exit doors, which are located on both the park side and the JFK Street side of the forum. In the event of an emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. And join me in welcoming Harvard College undergraduate Liv Sirio.
Hi everyone, I'm Liv Sirio. I'm a sophomore at the college studying English with a secondary in history, and I'm a member of the JFK Jr. Forum. Tonight, it's my pleasure to welcome award-winning journalist and press freedom advocate Alsu Kurmasheva, and our lovely moderator and Spring 2025 fellow, Ann Simmons. Alsu Kurmasheva, a U.S.-Russian dual national journalist for Radio Free Europe, or Radio Liberty, spent more than 9 months locked up in prison conditions in Russia, denied phone calls with her family, visits from U.S. consular officials, and proper medical care. In July 2024, Alsu was convicted in a secret trial of spreading false information about Russia's military and sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. She was released last August as a part of a mass prisoner swap between the U.S. and Russia that involved Evan Gershkovich, former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, and several Russian political dissidents. Today, she'll be sharing her story with us, and we are so thankful to both Ann and Alsu for their contribution to the journalistic field, as well as their presence here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Alsu Kurmasheva and Ann Simmons to the JFK Jr. Forum.
Thank you all. I'm audible? Yep. Great, thank you. So today we have a really special guest. I want to start by just saying that there's always been challenges to reporting in Russia, but it's become 10 times harder now, or even more, because of the war in Ukraine. When the war started, journalists from the West, some of them fled the country, others, their employers took them out and opened bureaus elsewhere. Others, if they were Russian, were actually jailed, or again forced into exile. The chilling effect came when my former colleague, Evan Gershkovich, was picked up in March of 2023. He was the first Western journalist to actually have been charged with alleged and, of course, false allegations of spying. But it didn't end there. 7 months later, in October 2023, another journalist was picked up, Alsu Kurmasheva. And this began kind of a pattern of people being detained, and not only journalists, but Westerners, possibly to be used as political pawns, but we don't know. So today we're going to hear from Alsu, who has a very harrowing story about what it's like to spend 9.5 months, or almost 9 months, was it, Alsu, in a Russian prison. She was convicted of discrediting the Russian military, spreading false information, and was actually sentenced to 6.5 years in a Russian prison. Luckily, last August, she was released in a major prisoner swap between the West and Russia. And there were at least 16 people freed during that time. But I'd like to start, Alsu, by welcoming you, and we will leave time for questions, 20 minutes for questions at the end. I'll let you know when you should go to the microphones. So welcome, Alsu. Your story maybe isn't as well known as that of Evan Gershkovich. There was a major campaign, of course it was a great campaign that the Wall Street Journal led, pulled out all the stops, and of course the Biden administration also helped to free not only Evan, but you and others. First of all, tell us what type of journalism you were practicing. Before you were detained, what kind of journalist were you and what were the issues? What role did you have?
Before I answer your question, and I want to express my gratitude and appreciation of this incredible opportunity of sharing this room and this stage with Anne, an incredible journalist, and say thank you for the free world for getting me out of that prison. Last year, this day, I was in a Russian prison cell, and today I'm here with you. Thank you so much. It happened only thanks to you, to the free world, to media, and keeping my name in spotlight. As Anne said, my case, my name wasn't as famous as Evan's. I've been a journalist for 25 years. I've been covering ethnic minorities, any kind of minorities in Russia, in Georgia, former Soviet Union. I've been with the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty for most of that time. And it's never been boring because it's a unique organization giving first of all, broadcasting in more than 20 languages to more than 20 countries, to the audiences where the free information and free speech is limited or doesn't exist at all. And it has certain risks, always. It has always had some certain threats to journalists, but I always admired people who worked for us in those countries. I've been doing all styles of journalism. So I started as a radio show moderator, that old school, which audio is still my favorite platform. I love listening and I love delivering my story in talking because it gives so much room to imagination. I love it. And as a radio show moderator in my native Tatar language for the Tatar radio show, there were times, and we will talk about journalism in Russia, when I joined the company, Radio Free Europe had a huge office and a studio in Russia. The media environment was completely different. My voice was recognized by our listeners, and the radio show was on FM station, on local FM stations. And things changed. Things changed, politics changed, and right now Radio Free Europe is an undesirable organization in Russia, which means it's illegal even for Russian citizens to work and even contact and give interviews to us. So I've been doing investigations, reporting, texts, video, all kind of journalism. But my passion has always been ethnic minorities. I worked for audiences in Georgia. I worked for audiences in Crimea. My separate, absolutely beloved passion is educational projects. I was leading an educational project educating audience in Tatar language. This kind of journalism I was doing.
That's a really good point, because covering kind of these ethnic communities wasn't exactly favourable to the Russian government either. Kind of giving voice to small communities that, have been marginalised. The Russian government was not interested in that. But tell us, Alsu, you were actually not reporting when you were detained in Russia. You were back there to see your family.
I have an extended family in Russia, in Kazan, Tatarstan, and I was going there very often, and nobody and nothing would stop me. As I said, that I was traveling there as a Russian citizen. I am a dual national, and I was visiting my mom. She needed help and support, and I was detained back at the airport when I was boarding a plane on my flight back to Prague.
That's right. Now tell us what happened there, because that was quite intriguing, right? You were at the airport already, and you thought that you were going home to Prague, and then suddenly you hear your name.
I heard my name, and I actually couldn't believe that something like that was happening, because what I could think of, it was my two daughters and my husband that I was going back to, and it was right before the summer break, and we had plans. We had our holiday booked, and everything was on a schedule, and my husband was supposed to leave the day after I came back. So it was normal family, like everybody lives, and then suddenly they stopped me from doing that. They confiscated my passport, and my Russian.
Tell us first of all, though, in terms of you hear your name, and the reason why I'm belaboring this point is because you hear your name at a Russian airport over the loudspeaker, and your antenna goes up, right? That's a red flag. You know immediately, oh my God, why are they calling me? Tell us what was going through your mind and what you did from your training, because we all have training, with global security training in terms of hostile environments, what you're meant to do at a certain time when things happen. So just tell us a little bit about that.
I locked myself in the bathroom just to give myself some time to think why they might be calling my name. Mm-hmm. And I texted my husband, I texted a couple of my colleagues, and actually when police came to detain me at that bathroom, mm-hmm. The last thing what I managed to send an audio message to my colleagues saying, hey, please, if anything happens, just get me out of here and find me. And then I was taken to interrogation, and I spent the whole day from morning till evening. Nobody knew where I was. And then in the evening, the lawyer found me, and I was allowed to go home. But my passports, my documents, and my phone were confiscated, so I couldn't leave the country. And the first case that I was charged with was not registering my American passport.
Right, we should explain that it's actually the law for Russians to register if they have a different passport for another citizenship. And I think this law came in as like 2012 or 2014. So if you've got, several passports, the Russians need to know.
As we later realized that it wasn't the passport that was a problem, it was my job that I was doing for years. And so there was a rather thick criminal case against me collected already. So all my journalism that I had been doing for years was brought up against me.
So tell us what the charges actually were in the end then for you. And
I was charged with spreading false information about Russian military. It's a very common charge these days. It's commonly used against journalists and activists who dare to say anything against the war, which you might all know that the war is not called a war in that country. It's called special military operation, and it's only calling that military operation a war will result then later in people will end up in prison. So I was sentenced to 6.5 years. It's also a very common term to be sentenced. Usually it's 6 or 7, or once I heard was up till 9 years. And that article of the criminal code can be used against somebody up till 15 years.
Up to 15 years. Think about that. For just calling the war a war.
And for murder, people are sentenced for 5-6 years.
Right. So when did it dawn on you that, oh my God, this isn't, I'm not going home. They're not giving me back my passport.
I don't know, when I was arrested. For those 5 months when I was under home arrest, I was still hoping to go home.
Right.
I was still hoping, but I didn't have any strategy. Because hope is a good thing. Hope keeps you going, unless it's backed up by strategy, Right. I didn't have a strategy. Again, it was a wishful thinking that I would think that, no, they will let me go. They possibly cannot arrest a mother of 2 children, a journalist, a woman, they wouldn't, it was wishful thinking. And when I got arrested, and it still took me a month to realize that I would spend there some time. And every day, for that first month, every day I was thinking, every day when that thick metal doors with chains was opening, and it took some time always for guards to open it. Every day that door of the cell would open, I thought, oh, okay, they're coming to say, Alsu, we apologize. This has been a terrible mistake. You are free now. So it took me a month. And then after that 1 month, when the court extended my arrest to the next 2 months. The arrest was always extended by 2 months and 2 months. When I got that first extension, and I just realized that I would be there for some time, and I turned on that survival mode because I knew I would go back. I knew I would be free one day, and I had a family. I had 2 children to raise. I had a family to take care of, and I had my mom. And I said to myself, like, Alsu, you will survive this, and you want to go back.
So take us inside a Russian prison. How were you held? Where were you held? What were the conditions like?
The conditions were horrible. I really don't want to go back into details because it's still emotional. I still can't understand why in the 21st century some place wouldn't have hot water or proper bathroom. And I'm not saying proper bathroom, but here it was a hole in the floor. But nothing has changed there. The prison in Kazan was built in the early 19th century, and for years during Soviet times, during Gulag times, it was a transition prison. Kazan, if you know Russian geography, is on the way from Moscow to Siberia. So political prisoners were there for some time. And I had a feeling that nothing had changed there. Nothing had changed in terms of conditions. Nothing had changed in terms of attitude to prisoners, interrogation techniques. I was so lucky I wasn't tortured physically, but the level of psychological torture, of course, was enormous. I was deprived of sleep for some time. I didn't have a mattress to sleep on. I didn't have proper bed. But it's all kind of torture, like being deprived of regular showers, or basically given just 3, 4, 5 minutes to take a shower, and it all torture. It is torture in the 21st century. But you know what's the worst thing there? The whole system is created to deprive the person of dignity, and a couple of days, 5 days, I had the longest time I didn't have access to a toothbrush and hairbrush, and just to have my basic some hygiene. It was 5 days. Okay. 5 days, and I think that a couple of more days of sleep deprivation, and that a person goes insane. Mm. There was no mirror. I saw myself in a mirror for the first time in Ankara when I was exchanged first time in 10 months. Isolated of any information, and being placed with cellmates who were not supposed to be there. So my crime was not a violent crime, so I didn't commit a crime, so I wasn't supposed to be sharing a cell with murderers or heavy drug addicts or something, but I was. It was also torture. It was way of torture. The light was 24/7. It was never off. There was no sunshine. The windows were small. Those kind of conditions, and if there was no support outside, if there were no letters, if I didn't have a family, if I didn't have people who loved and waited for me and supported and fought for me, very easily I would have gone insane and just, do something with myself, which I witnessed a lot. It's a matter of days, not even a month, that people go absolutely insane in those conditions.
Tell us about, receiving or not receiving information while you're in prison, and tell us about the ways that people were able to write to you in kind of code.
There are certain rules. So all the letters go through very severe censorship. Only after I got out, I realized that so many letters were not delivered to me. And I didn't even know the reasons. Immediately when my friends and family learned the system, how to send letters, they created a community of like, so every letter I was sending, say, to a friend somewhere was very easily exchanged with some other friends on the other side of the world, of the globe. So it was, when I got out, I realized that all my friends from all the countries around the world know each other. Like, and they know each other really well. Some people created businesses together already. I was so happy to know that. So they got acquainted. It's so, just, I connected them so well. And the letters, so people were not allowed to write about details of like some political details or criticizing something. I wasn't allowed to write about my case. I wasn't allowed to write about prison conditions. Only later when I got released, my friends showed me some of my letters where some of the lines were just, black and like cross.
Redacted.
So, yes, so there was heavy censorship. I was getting wonderful, wonderful letters from Russia. Young people were writing to me and asking for my advice. I got so many letters from people around the world who started learning Tatar because I inspired them with my project and like with my personality, and I'm so grateful for those letters. I actually exchanged letters with a couple of young women in Russia. They just had babies, and they started supporting political prisoners in Russia by writing, by sending them letters, and it was incredible. At the end, one of them sent me a letter, and it was actually the last one, unfortunately, luckily, but unfortunately, I'm not in touch with her anymore. Her words were like, "Alsu, thank you so much. I feel like you are inspiring more right now than I am you." But like, it was really great to see. So those letters were used against me as well. In the way that the prison administration knew that I was waiting for those letters. And I couldn't wait until Monday, to start getting those letters. And sometimes they wouldn't give them to me just because of no reason, because just they could do that. And that's what's hard.
To what extent, Alsu, do you feel that that you were actually a political pawn? When did that begin to dawn on you, if you indeed thought that?
Well, I didn't think about it from the very beginning, though I realized that was the main reason why I was there. And it was such a sad, unfortunate thing, because I tried never to be... I was serving my audience, just this is the best thing what we journalists can do. Bringing that free information to the audiences so people can take their informed decisions and reaching out. And this is what I never thought about myself that way, but by the end, when the conversations, the words about exchange started coming up, I realized...
How did that come up? How did you hear about exchange, for example?
I didn't know that the advocacy campaign was about that. I didn't know. So I heard, for the first time, I heard about that from my captors. Right. That actually, about that designation here in the United States as a wrongfully detained designation. I hadn't got that designation for a very long time. I actually got designated only on the flight back to the United States. But they would bring that against me, that, look, the US government didn't even designate you, so which means they don't want you back, so you will end up here serving your 10-year sentence. And the captors would use that. But I clearly could see that the case was political, and I was just waiting. And I realized I'm very, like, I'm a person, I love planning, I'm very realistic, and I would realize it could have happened for years. Paul Whelan was there for 5 years waiting for his exchange. So I knew that it could be a year or 2 or 3, and I can't say I was prepared for that, I wasn't. Because thinking that 3 more years, 3 more Christmases, 3 more summers, 3 more winters, and It was devastating thinking about that, but I knew it would happen eventually.
And now you are actually an advocate for press freedom. What exactly does that mean, Alsu? What role are you playing? I understand that there are others who remain.
This is such a good question, Anne. Thank you. It came so naturally. So when I got released, I needed some time. My health got worse, much worse in detention. So I need some time to improve my health.
And you weren't allowed any medical attention, I should add,
no,
right? No medical attention.
Like very
no
basic.
Visits from the US government.
Yes, I had no access to any consular services, or like nobody from the American embassy could visit me because I was treated as Russian citizen, and even worse, I would say, because Russian prisoners had access to phone calls, to visit from their family, and I didn't have that. So I was treated worse. And advocacy, yes, and it came so natural. I remember it was right after Thanksgiving, and I was in Prague. I just remembered one letter, one postcard that I got in between the holiday, like during holiday season last year. A lady from, I believe somewhere in Europe, wrote in Russian. She was a dissident from Russia. She wrote me, Alsu, you know, everybody is celebrating, and I decided to go to the next room where it's quiet, and I'm writing this letter to you while everybody is having shots of vodka and their salad and something. And absolutely, that like I have goosebumps right now, and that letter stayed with me forever. And I remember between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I said, "Well, Alsu, you should do that." And this was so natural. I went to the bookstore, I bought a bunch of postcards, and I got addresses from there are more than 20 journalists in Russia, and actually one of them is my colleague who worked for RFE, Radio Free Europe. Her name is Nika Novak, a young lady, a young journalist. She is in Russia's Siberia. She was sentenced to 4 years for collaborating with a foreign organization. And it was her who I wrote, and a couple of other journalists. Unfortunately, I can't write to other colleagues because Ihar Losik has been kept in Belarus for more than 3 years, and no letters are being delivered to him. We don't have any communication with him. Vlad Yasipenko is in Russian-controlled Crimea. There is no communication with him either. He's been kept there for 3 years. And there is Farid Mirkhalizadeh. He's in Baku. He's going. There are sham trials going against him right now. He's an economist. He's a very good expert in economics. He's a journalist, and all of them they face all those challenges just because they were telling the story, the story of freedom of speech and. To their audiences, and they were working for Radio Free Europe. So I wrote those letters, and actually many of them were delivered, and I got a response. That was the happiest days of my life. It was in January. So the letters from Prague, it took a month and a half for a letter or postcard from Europe, and actually the letters and postcards from the United States came in 3 weeks, which like really? Impressed me. Yes, so like it was faster delivery. I got many postcards and letters from the United States, from different states, from different people, and actually people who were not writing in Russian, they would just put the name, like something, you know, just like, because it's when you're sending a postcard, it's so important. I mean, it's not important what you say. It's so important to say, I'm going to buy some postcards in Boston and send that to my colleagues saying that, look, we mentioned your names at Harvard, and this is all it matters. It's so important to have that communication with the free world. For me, it was more important than having food or like some treats in prison. I couldn't stay without food, but I couldn't stay without letters.
And also, we should add that letters have to be written in Russian. You cannot typically send them in another language. If you don't write Russian, you have to use an auto-translator or get someone to translate it for you because the censors won't let it through unless it's in Russian. You mentioned your colleagues, journalists in prison. I'm very much a proponent of, boots on the ground. If you're going to tell a story, you need to be in a country. But right now, because of the level of repression, the just really hostile environment, and in particular to journalism, Western and Russian, it makes me wonder, how is it really possible to tell the story, the true story of Vladimir Putin's Russia on the ground in Russia? Should journalists still be there?
And I absolutely agree. As a journalist, with experience for more than 20 years, it is very important to be there and tell the story from inside. But it is very dangerous right now. We can't possibly ask any journalist to travel there because it's a prison term. It's a prison term, and more than that, even working with sources and interviewing people there might end up as a prison term for them. So we have to be very careful, but it is important to work there. That's why I have my biggest respect to foreign journalists who work there right now. So basically we see Russia through the prism of their reporting right now. And I absolutely can see how cautious they are, that they are not reporting everything they could have reported. But also, let's not undermine propaganda channels. It is also a special skill to watch and read through the lines what propaganda channels are reporting. It is actually a very good source of information as well. And I'm not the one who tell you here, like you are such a educated, dedicated audience here, absolutely, you know that even watching propaganda, you can learn a lot about what is happening in the country. Believe me, we're talking about Russia right now, but it's not only in Russia. There are several other countries around the globe where very similar things are happening with media. Very similar laws against journalists and media are being implemented, and it's not hard to just track what will happen next and to predict in certain countries. So you all know that. That's why any source of information is valuable from inside the country. Yes, people should report from inside the country, and yes, it is dangerous.
So, Alsu, you've also said that you hold no grudge, right? You don't feel hostility or animosity against the guards at the prison, for example, or how is that possible when the regime stole so many months of your life and the time that you could have had with your family?
I don't know if it's my personality. I don't hate anyone. I will never hate anyone. I'm never negative. I have been always very open-minded. I even try to talk to like those, people in prison administration. But you can talk and negotiate to people on a similar level.
How so? Explain.
Yes, so like similar with people who have a similar understanding of things, and those people that I don't tell everyone, but we're talking about guards and captors, right? Yes. They have their own view of the world, and voluntarily or non-voluntarily, they isolate themselves from other sources of information, and. So they arrested me under pretext that I was a foreign agent, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody in prison knew what a foreign agent was, but like in Russia, it's considered a spy. And when I was when the guards were walking me along the corridor in prison, they would shout out, "Hey, like be careful! The agent is walking here." Those kind of intimidation. And I was trying to talk to them. Hey, do you understand what foreign agent is? I mean, I'm not a spy. And then I realized that there is no sense, absolutely. It doesn't make any difference if I'm trying to explain something to them. Right. But you know, there were moments when one of the guards, I would never forget that, would come to me, and there's this little window in the door, like means of communication, where I would give food and like letters, something. He would come and say, you know, my mom knows you. I said, okay, nice to know. But like, apparently she's, his mom was a teacher at school, like, taught her teacher, and they were using the project that I started at school, and like she said hi. I said, okay, that's nice to hear. Say hi back to your mom. You know, those kind of things. And I don't know if I call that acts of kindness. Everybody is a human being, right? They were fortunate or unfortunate to be exposed to that view, that world. Then we are here, and I mean, I can't say what is bad or good. It is like it is. You know, I started my year this year. We took a short trip to Paris in early January, and we went to my favorite Musée d'Orsay, and you all know that two paintings by Monet, a lady with a parasol. Like he painted them from this side and from the other side. And actually I got stuck in front of those paintings. It's the same woman, same lady with the same parasol, but like when the wind is going this way, like you see her this way and that way. So it's the same world we're sharing, and it's very small. But we look at it from different angles, you know, and it came to me like, oh my gosh, there should be, somebody should teach everybody art of negotiations, that the wars should stop. And I understand with my naive mind, right, like we talking here, we can't stop the wars. I mean, they will be going on. But still, in the 21st century, why can't we just embrace all that experience that the humankind got during all those centuries and live a happy life? A very naive thought. I'm sorry for this. Like, we can go deep into that philosophical thought. But this is what I thought. Yeah, this is how I started my year. And I was so grateful to be there because I started my previous year somewhere else. So it was incredible. Yeah.
Well, it brings me to the question of adaptation as well. I mean, and kind of adjusting. You get out of prison, you see your family. Do you just slip straight back into your regular life?
I was, as I said, I mentioned wrongfully detained designation. Mm-hmm. That gave me an amazing opportunity to get therapy and all medical assistance here in the United States. And it was very important. And the therapist I was seeing there, that first 10 days of my freedom, told me, very experienced, wonderful people, they explained to me what would be happening to me in coming months. At that time, I didn't realize that. And that overjoy would be followed by even depression. Right. Well, I've never been depressed. Of course, every morning I wake up, I'm the happiest person on earth, and I don't think that will ever change, you know. But as I got to know more things about my friends, apparently when I was in prison, two of my very close people died, and one is terribly ill, and there were other many things happening, which my friends and my family, of course, didn't write me because, I mean, what's the point? You know, I couldn't change anything. So knowing that, learning more and more of that, actually, had an impact on me. And sometimes those negative feelings took over. And I also even haven't, it's been more than 6 months now, and I haven't met everybody I wanted to see. Because I want to take this slowly, because I want to hear everybody's story. Because, you know, my story is not only my story, it's everybody's story. So my colleagues who are covering that story, they have their stories to tell me. the lawyers, my family, my daughters every day remember something, you know, just, oh, Mom, this day last year it was snowing and so cold and I felt miserable and I cried when I got home. Look, I keep hearing those stories every day, and it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. So yeah.
I'd like to say, actually, if people have questions, if they could go to the microphones now as I ask the next question. It's about, I mean, it's the topic of war. You know, you're in prison, there's a war going on. One of the reasons why you're there is because they said that you spread false information about the Russian military in particular. Was there a lot of talk about the conflict with the other prisoners, and what was going through your mind then? Because obviously it seems that the war did play some kind of role in your detention. What can you say to that, Alsu, if anything?
We didn't talk much about the war because as I was a political prisoner, and there are many cases right now in Russia where talking to on political topics might result in additional criminal case. We have cases when somebody was released already and they immediately took him back to prison because there was a new criminal case against him after his exchange of thoughts after watching a news program on something, you know, like we knew it, and people were cautious to talk to me. People didn't ask me questions. I was a like kind of a very dangerous prisoner there, you know, like people. So they were, though I was isolated very often, they would put me on the way to interrogations. They would put everybody in a big cell, like up till 50 people, and it was a place to mingle, exchange information, and I was very isolated. I mean, there were women who would talk to me, who would know me, but otherwise the information about me that I'm dangerous was there in prison. So which was very good actually for me. So like I knew that not random people, random prisoners wouldn't approach me. Right. So yeah, I was a dangerous one.
Thank you, Alsu. I'll take the first question, please.
Yes, hi, my name is Bryn. I'm a master's student at the HSPH, and thank you so much for being here and speaking with us, and I'm so glad that you're free now. My question for you is, you were obviously imprisoned in horrific conditions for a long time. Did you have a strategy for just surviving day to day, minute by minute?
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, I had a strategy. It was lots of yoga, and there was no space, so it was on my bed. I mastered all possible yoga practices just doing on my bed, and lots of meditation and reading. I didn't have access to particular books I wanted, but I read everything. And there were times when I didn't have books. I read ingredients on the food packages, and I remembered, as they are, you know, several languages of ingredients, I would task myself by like learning those languages. Every time, you know, Russia is very multinational, and the cellmates would be of different ethnic groups, and I would learn their languages. I would go for, there was a mandatory 1 hour walk, even in freezing temperatures. I would always go, and I would exercise outside. Yes, that was my survival technique, survival mode. And I was, yeah, and that support, it was I just knew, you know, I had those waves of energy sometimes, and I didn't even know what happened. And then I later realized that, you know, like some campaign was there out, you know, and just something. It's all very well connected, like, you know, like on every level. And those letters, some food packages I was like getting from my friends and family occasionally, like once a month, those kind of things.
Thank you. So, gentleman up there, yes.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ben. I'm a freshman at the college. And first, I just really wanted to thank you for coming and sharing this incredibly important story with us. I really appreciated it. And my question is about the information environment in Russia. I'm curious, like, drawing on your experiences both as a reporter and also within the prisons, I'm just wondering, like, what information do people have access to? How do they get their information? I'm just curious, like, what that ecosystem is like.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben, for your question. There is access. Like everybody who wants to access free information can have access through VPNs, and VPN is not banned yet. And it's not banned to watch or follow any of the undesirable media as well. It's illegal to spread. It's illegal to repost or just forward it to someone. It is illegal. But otherwise, there have been no cases yet that somebody would be detained or interrogated for watching something. The information environment is, it's scary. People, and it's another thing, many people don't want to hear that kind of information people voluntarily isolated themselves from the world. It works double way. That there is like the government who isolate the population. It's also people themselves. It's a survival mode. They just want to survive. So they are going. Again, those dacha, the gardens are very popular in Russia, where people will just go to that piece of land and just plant herbs and potatoes and just like be there, listen to music and not watch any news. So this is, they are in survival mode, but they have access if they want to.
Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark. Thank you, as everybody has said, for spending some time with us and earlier as well in the study group. You had touched on this briefly, but your coverage focused a lot on the culture and the linguistic diversity within Russia. And of course, having spent time in prison with a lot of different cultures and a completely harrowing experience such as that, I would expect your perspective to have changed from when you were a journalist before to now. And so I was hoping you could speak a little bit about how that perspective has changed and how you perceive Russia's motivations on censorship of that diaspora or Russification in general has changed since your time in prison. Thank you.
Thank you. A very important question. While covering Russia, Western journalists, Western media shouldn't undermine covering ethnic minorities. It's a very, very important part of Russia. Those minorities are indigenous people there. It's not that they came at some point. They've always lived on those territories. And as Anya mentioned, it's the Kremlin always had seen them as a threat and as a possible resilience. I don't think the prison changed my thoughts and my vision. And there were times in the 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union that there were better times for minorities. Minorities could open their schools, learn their history, not being censored, start their own media, newspapers, radio shows. Now it's the worst time, but I can't say that they are they are put in worse conditions than others. Right now, everybody in Russia is under certain conditions being censored. It's not that Tatars are having worse conditions than Russians. It's that the amount of fear and uncertainty is very equal. It's the same for everyone. But many ethnic groups are being represented as, I would say, folklore ethnic groups. It's just nobody raises a question about ethnic education anymore. People are allowed to sing and dance, and people are allowed to learn singing and dancing in those languages. And some ethnic groups are doing better than the others. And it's again that strength and resilience within that ethnic group as well. And I'm ethnically Tatar, and my nation has my Tatars have always been resilient, but very pragmatic as well. They have been in that survival mode for centuries, and they have survived. And I truly believe they will survive this too.
It's a really important question. Thank you, young lady.
Hi, my name is Wyeth. I'm a first year at the college. Sorry. I just really wanted to thank you for coming to talk to us today. It's been super meaningful. I don't know, listening to you makes me want to learn Russian so I can write prisoners. But I was wondering if knowing everything that would happen to you and knowing what you would have to go through, whether or not 25 years ago you would have still chosen to be a journalist and cover ethnic minorities in Russia.
Oh, what a good question. So there is no if in real life, right? I mean, this is what happened. I always wanted to, okay, going back a little bit, if we have time.
Yeah.
So I grew up at the end of the Soviet Union, right? Like the last years, I went to still caught that Soviet system of education where very strict, lots of censorship. But I was lucky to go to an English school where we had incredible teachers who had never met a native speaker in English, but they were able to give us not only the language and literature, but also the way of thinking, like free thinking. I remember celebrating Thanksgiving, celebrating Valentine's Day, celebrating Christmas, and they would tell us Halloween, how Halloween was like a very big thing at school. But they would tell us, don't tell this to your parents, please. And of course we wouldn't, because the reason why they didn't want us to tell the parents, but because they didn't trust parents, because they were afraid that they will report on them for bringing those Western values or something. So this is how I grew up, and that natural curiosity brought me to this profession, that to question everything, to ask questions, to search for answers, and so I came to try to work with Radio Free Europe for 3 months 25 years ago, and I ended up, and I never ever regretted any minute spent there. I really loved this profession. So back to a question, I guess I wouldn't regret it. I wouldn't change anything. Of course, that experience, that ordeal I've been through didn't have to happen in my life. I mean, I could absolutely live without it. My family could live without it. Yes. It's not that we learned anything from it, no. But I will be happy to take that experience to advocate for others, to educate others, and I'll be happy to move on. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your question. Jiva.
Hi, my name is Jiva. I'm also first year at the college. I think your experience is extremely relevant, especially in the context of the war, and with the fact that although many Russian reporters, especially Russian nationals, have left Russia, many have also stayed in Russia. So I'm curious to know, I'm sure you know many Russian reporters who did not leave Russia after the war started. Do you know what strategies they use to continue writing, at least in some ways or another, reporting on the current events and trying to not get arrested in doing so?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I'm not in touch with any reporter who currently reporting on current events. I know some people who work on culture, like local cultures. Those who they always state media. There is no other media in Russia rather than state media, and unfortunately, I know many people who quit. And those who wanted to stay in the country, they quit. I know those kind of people, but I'm not in touch with any local journalists. And absolutely, my heroes are people, the journalists from foreign news agencies who still work there. I haven't been in touch, but I would be happy to sit down later when they come and travel, just to talk and learn the insights, how they did that. Because they're doing incredible work, and as I said, we all now rely on their reporting very much. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jiva. And just to continue in that, Alsu, I mean, in terms of just the reporting strategies by Russian journalists, they're all on the outside for the most part now, right? Because most people, like any journalist who's Russian, who's in Russia now, is probably working for state media. And one thing you should know is that the majority of Russians get their news from state media. And we're talking about almost everyone. They can get information elsewhere, but the level of propaganda, the level of kind of constant drumming, the drumbeat from state media, it really is it's palpable. I mean, everyone realizes that, there is a level of propaganda, but people have bought into it. So how do we overcome that, Alsu? I mean, what can be done in terms of trying to get real news to Russians?
And following up what you said, state media, Russian state media is a very good quality. I mean, I have to admit, absolutely good production, good quality, good narrative. I mean, it's just, people should be critical. People should know their sources, what the information sources. People should ask questions. People should educate themselves. People should educate each other. Right now, it is dangerous to talk to a neighbor, even in Russia, about like current events or political things. So people are very much isolated in themselves. But talking within a family, or again, I believe in education. I mean, what guys you are doing here is like the best thing. How you can invest in yourself, and and it's the best thing. And you will never find yourself in a trap. Like you will never be trapped between the governments, between people who want to influence you, if you constantly ask questions and educate yourself.
I see we have two last questions here. This gentleman, and then. It's great.
Hello, my name is Ahmed Aldeeb. I'm a first year at the college. I have a question for you regarding, what do you think of the future for reporters now in the state of Russia under Putin, as well as beyond that?
Thank you. It's very hard to predict future, and I'm not in the position, I'm not the one who to predict future, but I'm sure, like for now, that reporting from outside of Russia will continue, and all those media in exile, they are very respected, and people in Russia trust them, and that kind of reporting will continue. And people in Russia, reporters in Russia, will find the ways to report, to continue engaging with the audiences. I'm sure it can't go away. It cannot. It still is there. I can't say that journalism is dead in Russia. It is there. It is there. There are examples of very good journalism as well. It's just people can't report on certain events, and they know it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a last question, please.
Yes. My name is Jared. I've been a journalist for over 20 years, and I'm watching the decline of journalism here in the United States. You talked about journalists in Russia quitting their jobs and leaving the industry. And here in this country, we're seeing quite a bit of that with layoffs and people leaving their jobs and deciding that journalism isn't something they want to participate in any longer. And I'm kind of falling into that group as well. I'm curious about what advice you would have for a country that is watching our journalism start to change in significant ways. What advice you'd have for journalists here?
Oh, thank you for your question. Again, I'm certainly not a person to give advice here. But what is happening here is a very, I cannot say natural, but it is a natural thing to happen in a free world, like those kind of dynamic, and I'm sure it will solve out much easier than in some other countries we were talking about right here, and I'm sure that's like matter of some journalists quit, there will be other journalists coming back, and the whole media environment is so different here. It's free. It still will be free, and this is how it will be in this country. It's not only my hope. There is a strategy here. There are powerful press freedom organizations in this country, and everything will be fine. It's still not that bad. It's still fine. But just as I said, things that we're talking about here about Russia, it's about many countries. And when we stay alert, when we stay educated, and when we educate ourselves and each other, things will go well.
Great. Thank you, Alsu. Can everyone join me in thanking our guests?